que estoy aquí. Nobody's gonna stop me. Nada.
10 WWE wrestlers that dominated airtime and still failed to get over. Number 10, Tensai. One of the WWE's big pet projects coming out of WrestleMania 28 was Lord Tensai. Tensai had previously been in WWE under various characters and gimmicks, and following a successful run in Japan, WWE actually believed that Tensai could be a great addition to the main event picture. The Tensai would have a ton of television time following WrestleMania 28, and he was even booked to win major matches and even defeated John Cena on Raw. The issue though was that fans simply didn't care. Tensai was often met with chants of Albert, and the fans were fully aware that this was a man who was prominent in prior eras in WWE, just now with a shaved back. After some vocal resentment from the audience, WWE decided to call it a day with Tensai, and by the end of 2012, he'd been moved dramatically down the card as a comedy act. Number 9, David Otunga. And Wade Barrett was without a doubt the star of the Nexus faction in 2010. However, David Otunga was another name that WWE believed could be a significant player for the company. Now, Otunga had a great look and he was known for his marriage to celebrity star Jennifer Hudson. But out of this, it could certainly be argued that Otunga wasn't remotely ready for the main roster. WWE tried their hardest to get Otunga over, and they even had him win the tag team titles with John Cena. When WWE realized that Otunga's in-ring work was a key factor in him failing to connect with the crowd, WWE then decided to have him as somewhat of an authority figure on television. This once again flopped, as Otunga was just so lifeless in the role, and literally anyone on the roster could have done a better job. After years of trying, WWE decided to eventually move Otunga over to a commentary role, and even this did little to excite the fans, so Otunga's dull commentary was often met with less than stellar reviews. Number 8, Heidenreich. Whenever a wrestler would enter into a feud with The Undertaker, it was a given that WWE would devote television time in order to get that wrestler over. This was the case with Heidenreich, who was one of the most featured stars on SmackDown in late 2004. But the real issue was that his character was all over the place, and the small amount of aura that he had completely disintegrated the moment his matches started, as his in-ring work was abysmal. Following the feud with The Undertaker failing to get him over, well, to the extent WWE wanted, they would try a number of things to get him over. They would try turning him babyface and aligning him with Road Warrior Animal, but this did little in the long term to improve his status within the company. Jim Ross commented on Heidenreich on his podcast, and the legendary announcer summed up why the character failed. We thought, well, this guy is big and impressive and has a distinct look. If we can get him fundamentally sound and teach him how to do the basic rudimentary things in the ring that a big man would do, then we would be ahead of the curve. It's just that some guys have the aptitude for the business and some guys just don't. I thought John had a problem assimilating the nuances of being a pro wrestler performer. As far as a bad guy or anything, no, some guys just don't have, he didn't grow up a fan, he didn't know the product as much, or you could disconnect whether at some point in the formative years. Sometimes it's hard to regain that, and I think that's the case with John. Heidenreich would eventually be cut from his contract in early 2006, ending a 3-year run in the company and failing to get over at all. Number 7, Lacey Evans. Sometimes WWE really can't be blamed for a wrestler failing to get over with the audience. WWE tried endlessly to get Lacey Evans over. This included various character changes and her booking as both a heel and a babyface. But Evans just lacked that extra element that would make fans even care about her. And it didn't help that her in-ring work never seemed to improve, despite her working with names such as Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, and Sasha Banks. It can sometimes be the case that WWE put all their resources into getting a specific star over, when in reality, the writing is on the wall early on. And only WWE themselves failed to have the foresight to realize that that wrestler would never get over to the level they desire. Number 6, Eva Marie. But when WWE began to push Eva Marie, it led to a lot of questions from fans and wrestling critics alike. Marie was from a bygone era in the sense that she was being pushed predominantly because of her looks, and she had zero wrestling ability, and all of her heat was the dreaded go-away heat. But despite this, WWE continued to present Marie in featured roles, and even though she left WWE in 2017, they made a baffling call to bring her back years later, but this time in a major role. The women's roster had evolved drastically since she left in 2017, and there really wasn't a place for a wrestler that simply couldn't wrestle. Fans had hoped that Marie would have somewhat improved in the ring, but that wasn't the case. As if anything, she looked even more awkward than before. She will be cut from a WWE contract in late 2021, making a return to the company a complete waste of everyone's time. Number 5, Billy Gunn. It's worth noting that there's no denying that as part of the New Age Outlaws, Billy Gunn was insanely over. However, as a single star, Gunn could just never get to the next level. Gunn was pushed to the moon in 1999 when he won the celebrated King of the Ring tournament, and this win was going to propel Gunn into the main event scene in WWE, as he believed that he had the ability to deliver amongst the top names in the company. The WWE would make the biggest mistake with him. He would enter into a feud with The Rock, and whilst on paper this should have been good, The Rock overshadowed Gunn every time they shared the screen. Gunn simply couldn't match The Rock's immense promo ability, and he often looked lost and confused during the segments. Following Gunn's loss to The Rock at the SummerSlam pay-per-view in 1999, WWE would realize that Gunn really wasn't cut out to be a main eventer, and they would proceed to move him back into the tag division. WWE executive Bruce Pritchard would examine Gunn's work as a single star on his podcast, and he summarized it perfectly. If you look at Billy Gunn, my God, he's a Greek god still to this day. He's got all the tools and can do anything, but for whatever reason, when push comes to shove, he's just not there. I'll say the same thing about Road Dogg. Dogg was much better as a tag team wrestler, and you put those guys together and they make magic together. You take them apart, and now part of that illusion is exposed. WWE would try a few times over the subsequent years to present Gunn as a single star, but it just never worked. And WWE always found themselves reinserting Gunn back into the tag division. Number 4, Ezekiel Jackson. But during the 2010s, there were endless names that Vince McMahon insisted on pushing. One of these names was Ezekiel Jackson. Jackson would be chosen as the last ever ECW champion. Whilst this should without a doubt have gone to Christian, the obvious idea here was that he would give Jackson some much needed credibility before his move to either Raw or SmackDown. Jackson would eventually end up joining a stable known as The Core, led by Wade Barrett. WWE's vision for this stable was to simply make Jackson a main event star, but the fans weren't exactly pushing to see Jackson in a prominent role. WWE would go all the way with Jackson's push when they had him defeat Barrett to become Intercontinental Champion. But the problem here was that Jackson didn't have the in-ring skill or the fan connection to carry a title, and soon enough, they just seemed to forget that Jackson was champion at all. Jackson would eventually drop the title of future WrestleMania main eventer Cody Rhodes, and his WWE career would never be the same again. Number 3, Jack Swagger. When WWE makes a wrestler world champion, that wrestler must have some moderate fan support behind them, or there is a strong possibility that that reign will flop. At WrestleMania 26, Jack Swagger was probably the least likely name to win the Money in the Bank briefcase, yet WWE decided to make Swagger the new Money in the Bank holder. Swagger would subsequently cash in on the next edition of SmackDown, and overnight, he had gone from a non-factor in WWE to a world champion. Now, this was a strange call, as Swagger was barely getting any reaction whatsoever, and to make him world champion just made 0 sense. Fans were suddenly supposed to take Swagger seriously in the role. This was virtually impossible due to how atrocious the reign ended up being. His 78-day run was flat and lifeless, and although Swagger was basically the main star on SmackDown at the time, it was highly detrimental to the product and to Swagger's legacy as a top star. Number 2, Vladimir Kozlov. One of the most frustrating parts of being a WWE fan between 2008 to 2009 was witnessing the push of Vladimir Kozlov. Kozlov was a generic heel that was propelled into the main event scene. He was a name that rarely received any reaction at all. But despite this, WWE positioned him in prominent programs with elite names such as Jeff Hardy, Triple H, and even had him defeat The Undertaker clean. Around WrestleMania 25, WWE gradually realized that the push really wasn't going to work, but it was too late for a lot of the fans, as WWE had devoted so much time to a name that was now going to be relegated to a comedic role in the company. And number 1, Austin Theory. Austin Theory was one of the firm favorites of Vince McMahon during his final few years running WWE. This favoritism had somewhat of a justification behind it, as Theory was a fantastic in-ring worker and he definitely had a lot of upside. But with that being said, Theory wasn't getting the main event level reactions that WWE would have liked. WWE decided to outright ignore this and continue on with Theory's ascension of the card. When Triple H took over WWE, he took over a roster that had Theory as Mr. Money in the Bank. Due to this, the game virtually had no choice but to follow through on McMahon's initial vision. Although it was apparent earlier on that Triple H wasn't high on Theory, he was still committed to booking him regularly on TV, and even allowed Theory to defeat the legendary John Cena at WrestleMania 39. The match itself, as well as the build-up, greatly exposed Theory, as he couldn't hold a candle to Cena, and it was seen as a waste that Cena put him over on the grand stage of WrestleMania. Over the years, it's been clear that Triple H has backtracked on Theory's push, and Theory's been an established tag team with Grayson Waller. Whilst this is a far cry from the days when Theory was going to be the next face of WWE and perhaps the next John Cena, this is perhaps the right approach to take, as fans are slowly beginning to invest in Theory once again, and he definitely has the potential to once again reach a prominent status in WWE.